of 1 to 4 dwelling units per acre to B1 business, no specified density, but with proffers, on tax parcels 56-A-140 and 145, containing approximately 2.108 acres of land. The property is located on the west side of Route 301, Richmond Turnpike, and along the west side of Route 695, Edwards Road, and is located in the Mattaponi voting district. The proposed rezoning would allow the creation of approximately 19,200 square feet of commercial uses subject to some use restrictions, as well as proffers on design. The proposed commercial zoning is intended, as stated by the applicant, to serve as a neighborhood scale commercial and office facility to serve Brookwood and nearby areas, and also proffers architectural standards consistent with architectural standards previously accepted by the board in other communities. The Bowling Green Milford Area Plan and Comprehensive Plan designates a property on the boundary between planned development and planned commercial uses. The Bowling Green Milford Area Plan also provides additional comprehensive planning guidance. The Bowling Green Milford area planning process began in 2002 and was completed with the adoption of that plan in September of 2006 as a component of the Caroline County Comprehensive Plan. A central theme of this area plan is that development adjacent to the town should enhance and benefit the town. And a second theme of the plan is that the town should be the commercial center of the growth area. The Bowling Green Milford Plan also encourages traditional neighborhood design with small-scale, neighborhood-oriented commercial development where appropriate. Thus, the plan offers language and guidance that can either be argued for or against the rezoning application. The Planning Commission felt that it was appropriate to request the town of Bowling Green to provide the opportunity to review and comment on the application, given the relationship between the county and town representatives in developing the plan. A letter signed by Mayor David Stork, dated November 12, 2009, is included in your packet, which expresses the concern of town council and is in opposition to request. Based upon a review of all the factors and the guidance contained in both the Bowling Green Milford Plan and the Comprehensive Plan, the Planning Commission forwarded a recommendation of denial to the Board of Supervisors from its November 2009 meeting. And Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, the board members have questions of Mr. Fincham before we open the public hearing. Appears no question before the public hearing. Let me ask one. Yes, sir.
Mr. Fincham, before you go.
Yes, sir.
The Planning Commission voted to deny this, and what was the staff recommendation?
Staff did not have a recommendation to the Planning Commission, and we reviewed all the factors with them, and they forwarded that recommendation to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that being said, we'll now declare the public hearing open. Certainly, before we start, we'll remind everybody that this is a judicial process, and certainly we would make sure that you know, everybody kind of keep your comments to yourself. Once you approach the podium, that's the appropriate time to talk, and we would appreciate your support in that. And right now, are there any citizens who would like to speak on the project? You can do that. If the applicant certainly has an opportunity to speak first, and you can come forward and do that at this time.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I have a little PowerPoint presentation I'd like to do. Does the screen go down? Thank you. Huh? They have a copy. Great. Thank you. As Mr. Fincham said, we have a commercial rezoning here. We're about 2.1 acres which were originally included in the Brookwood subdivision. Well, 1 acre was included in the subdivision, which got the special exception a couple of years ago, and 1 acre is kind of a separate parcel by itself. We're asking to convert both of those to a B1 zone. It's tax maps 56A, 140, and 145. What we're proposing is 16 flex office units, very similar to the product down at Ladysmith Commons in Ladysmith that Mr. Calgar has built. We have made some proffers. We have excluded some uses, which I'll go over. We will have architectural standards very similar to Mr. Calgar's standards, so the county will know and be familiar with the product that you're getting. And we've agreed to plant a buffer along the property line, which is currently vacant property next door to us, but if they ever decide to develop it in the future, we'll be buffered from them. The location is, we're a little over a mile from the town limits on 301, right at the intersection of Edwards Road and 301. This is the subdivision plat for Brookwood subdivision, and the area there in the yellow is where the commercial fits in. It's where the new Edwards Road realignment will come in at a 90-degree angle from 301. And our project will consist of 2 buildings of 8 units each. You see that those buildings are pulled up close to the street. They front the street. The parking is in the rear. That's from staff's recommendation to go along with the requirements of the comprehensive plan, that this be a traditional walking type of development, and that the traffic and parking be hidden as much as possible from view. This is a close-up of the site plan. Again, you can see there are 2 pods of 8 units to the 8 units to each building. The one building along 301 has enough green area beside it to accommodate a daycare if someone decides that that would be economically feasible. So hopefully to serve the residents in that area, if it's necessary, we can accommodate that. And you can see the buffer that we've proffered along the property line there. We have, again, the proffers are, we'll exclude certain uses, the architectural guidelines, and the buffer strip. The certain uses that we have excluded, and to be honest, this was based on previous rezonings that the board had accepted, and we didn't intend to have any of these uses in there. So we've agreed to exclude those uses, which we don't believe would really be appropriate with that type of area. We have 6 pages of architectural standards, and again, they're modeled after Ladysmith Commons. So this is what they will look like. I believe it's very attractive for this kind of a development. It will not be your typical strip shopping center. It'll be a village type of look. The buildings, unlike in this case where the parking is in front of the buildings, the parking will be behind the buildings. They'll be fronting on a sidewalk. We've tried to work within the bounds of the comprehensive plan. For the Bowling Green Milford area study, they did a community survey, and we found it interesting that 2 of the existing weaknesses of the area, the top 2, were 80% of the respondents said a lack of employment in the area, and 76% of the respondents said a lack of availability of shopping. We believe that this project would help address each of those issues. It would provide places for people to work, and to a much, much lesser extent, places to shop. We don't expect very much in the way of retail sales. We would expect this would be more in the way of office, perhaps a little cafe that wanted to serve the local neighborhood, but not expecting a lot of retail sales, but it would be some. We believe that it meets some of the other goals of the comprehensive plan. It's a walkable community. The folks along Edwards Road in Brookwood subdivision will be able to walk to this. It'll have sidewalks. It meets the proposed development standards contained in the comprehensive plan. The buildings face the street. The buildings are close to the street. The parking is in the rear. As you can see from the next map, it's identified in the comp plan for business use. It's right there, right beside the D, the little red spot there. It is shown as planned commercial. The one, to be honest, 800-pound gorilla in the room is the town of Bowling Green. And we realize that the comprehensive plan says Bowling Green should be the primary commercial center, and we agree with that 100%. Caroline needs a strong, vibrant downtown Bowling Green. But we think we complement Bowling Green rather than compete with Bowling Green. First, you can look at the town's website. They list over 130 businesses in town. Frankly, I was surprised it was that many. I think our small project will not materially affect a town that has that many businesses actively going on in the town. Another thing we noticed is that the town currently has a very low vacancy rate for business property in the town. If you are a new business owner wanting to locate into the town, you would have very few options of where to go. We would offer a different choice, and that was our third thing, is I think folks should have a choice of locations. Again, we don't think we'll be big enough to really conflict with the town. We'll just complement the town. And we would ask for your approval of this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, any other citizens who would like to address the board on this public hearing?
Chair.
Any other citizens who would like to address the board on this public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, board members, my name is Glenn McDermott. I'm the Vice Mayor of Bowling Green. I was the former chairman of the Bowling Green Milford Subplan Committee, and Mr. Fincham did a great job driving and directing and helping us through that process, and it was a great process. It was a very well done, very thought out process. We looked at a lot of things, got a lot of information. But you know, as we look at the proposed rezoning here, there's some issues that we have for the town of Bowling Green. We came to the Planning Commission, spoke on that. Mike reported on that to you earlier. You know, we're not opposed to any businesses. We think we all need to grow, and the development is important for our community as a whole. 5 years ago, we were in a different environment. Things were quite different than they are today. People are struggling. You know, a development on the outside of town that has a commercial aspect to it is going to drive business out of town. It's going to drive some of our merchants and have some issues with them and take actual business away from them. You know, this planned community is supposed to be for a neighborhood. There's no neighborhood in that area. We know there's a planned neighborhood in that area, and we would like to see that happen. But guys, frankly, with the environment that we're in today, I can't see that happening anytime soon. The way houses are going now, the things that are happening in our own community, we would love to see that grow. But that doesn't make sense. There's not any housing there to support a neighborhood commercial piece of property, as the gentleman explained. And you know, it looks really nice. They've done a nice job planning it. I think it's a nice piece and a good opportunity. But it's the wrong time, and it's the wrong environment. And we can't afford to lose merchants out of our town. You know, the Bowling Green subcommittee, Milford subcommittee, also focused that the town of Bowling Green would be a really good place to focus business. And that's where we'd like to see it focused first. You know, the gentleman said that there were 130 businesses in the town of Bowling Green. You guys amazed at that? Yeah, I was too. Well, the truth of the matter in regards to that is that's business licenses. That means home businesses, that means exercise little businesses, that means internet businesses, that means a lot of things. So there are not that many actual commercial businesses in the town of Bowling Green. I don't know the exact number, but I was kind of blown away with the 130. I don't think they're there. We have some vacancies. We have some opportunities for growth in the town of Bowling Green. And the town council would like to bring the message to this board that we think that this is a great opportunity somewhere in the future, not now, not at this time, not in the environment that we live in today. We can't afford to hurt the merchants of the town of Bowling Green, which in effect hurts the community itself, the entire county of Caroline. So our recommendation is to deny this rezoning for the reasons that we've stated. You know, again, we'd like to see this happening sometime in the future. Our merchants are hurting, guys. We've lost a couple of merchants in the last year or so. We can't afford to put anything on the outskirts of town that can't be supported. We just can't. So if that piece of property goes up and develops, it's going to draw business out of the town. So we'd appreciate your consideration. We appreciate you listening to us. The town is very concerned about it. The council members are very concerned about it. And we'd appreciate your consideration of declining the rezoning permit.
All right, thank you, Mr. McDermott. Are there any other citizens who would like to address the board on this rezoning? Are there any other citizens who would like to address the board on this rezoning? Last call, do we have any citizens who would like to address the board on this rezoning? Seeing none, we'll now declare the public hearing closed. Okay, gentlemen, you've heard the applicant, you heard from the town. Questions of staff or the applicant are appropriate this time. Mr. Popowitz?
Yes. This is in the comprehensive plan as a growth area, is that correct? And it's in the B1 type districting, or?
It is in the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
It's in the Bowling Green Milford area plan.
Okay.
It is basically right on the boundary between planned commercial and planned development, which is the residential designation that we use for residential uses. It's right there on the boundary.
So it's on the boundary. Mm-hmm. And typically speaking, we'd be talking about something that if in a normal age would be something that would probably be connected with the facility that's going in from the residential side.
One of the tenets, I think, of all of our growth areas is to encourage mixed-use development.
Sure.
Where you have commercial uses in proximity to the residential uses, there are a number of benefits. It in theory, cuts down on vehicle trips. It allows people some limited retail opportunity and employment opportunities near where they work.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't envisioned as a town center or major commercial area. That was reserved, as stated in the plan, for the town of Bowling Green.
Sure.
But certainly the plan does envision some small-scale neighborhood intensity commercial uses that it's envisioned would not compete with the town.
Okay. Okay. So basically what we have here, in my opinion, is a he said, she said situation. The applicant's saying that, hey, we're not going to compete with the town's saying this will compete with them, and I'm going to, in my opinion, I don't believe in protectionism, I do believe in capitalism, and I believe in competition anyway. So I think that's what's made our country strong. I think in this day of people saying, I need help and I need a bailout, I think that that has gotten us in some trouble nationally. And I'm certainly not going to try to prevent a businessman to come in here and put new businesses in our county. I don't think that that's an argument that holds water with me, being pretty much a pure capitalist in my mind. So with that, I'll leave my comments to the others.
Mr. Fincher. Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Eggers?
Water and sewer, that is provided by the town of Bowling Green?
Water is provided through the old Milford Sanitary District.
Okay.
And sewer, yes, we have an agreement with the town of Bowling Green
We purchase availability.
to purchase availability from them.
Okay.
And if you recall, there were some limitations on the Brookwood. Remember, we negotiated 2 numbers
Right.
based upon the water and sewer capacities that were available.
Mr. Chairman, that's all the questions. If we're going to have discussion, I'll certainly have further discussion on this
Okay.
issue, but that's my only questions.
Okay, Mr. Seeley?
Mr. Chairman, I have spent a good bit of time with town council and merchants in town, and competition for business space right now would be very detrimental. And there's been nothing said about when this would be built or what would actually be moved there. One part of the presentation says it would be office space. One part of the presentation said it would be shops. Currently, Bowling Green has a number of vacancies. And with the economic situation, the rezoning at this point in time just doesn't make sense. The residential development hasn't started, and I understand it's a component. And I think that component should be looked at when the residential actual piece of that begins. From my perspective, Bowling Green, we all in Bowling Green pay county taxes as well as town taxes. And I think we need to look at the merchants there and look at the economic situation and say, this isn't the time or the place to rezone something else.
Okay, starting out, I just had a question, mainly one question primarily for the applicant, Mr. Gerald. And I did see there was a question in the application about the fire flow, whether or not with the number of houses in the water system, you're fully capable of maintaining the fire flow.
Well, in my mind, that's not really a zoning issue. That's something we're going to have to address before we build those buildings. I mean, that will definitely have to be addressed before we break ground. So I don't see that being a concern. If we can't address that fire flow, we don't build anything. Yeah.
Problem is, in my mind, is a zoning issue.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that, you know, you're capable of making sure that this, with the number of houses you have versus the commercial complex, that you make sure. There was a note from the building official saying that was the only concern of all the people who looked at this thing.
You're catching me off guard because I didn't get that page. But what I would propose to address that issue is if fire flow is an issue, if we proceed with the commercial, then we put on hold enough residential to make up for the fire flow, to make the fire emergency services folks happy. Okay. I'd be willing to proffer that right now we have 150 by right units residential. If one commercial unit equals 3 houses, then we don't get to do 3 houses until we address that. That's how I'd be willing to proffer that.
Okay. All right, that's all the question I have, Mr. Thomas.
That was a good question. Mr. Gerald, I guess, well, if you want to come back, just to make sure, because that was one of my questions, and I just want to make sure in front of the county attorney, we can take your proffer, because we've actually had the public hearing already, and proffers have to be in before the public hearing by law. But if he's making it more restrictive, we don't have to have another public hearing, right? Okay, so you're making it more restrictive. That was really another question, because it said in the application you have you're going to do less houses theoretically, aside from the fire flow. Theoretically, you'll do less houses in Brookwood because of this particular project.
Yes, because there was already an issue because of the sewer capacity. Right. Yes. And that's so I would be willing to couple this with the sewer / fire flow. Okay. Yeah.
All right. I think that's it. That's it for you. Fewer houses, water and fire. Wait, one last question. Mr. Coghill, who lives right at Edwards Road.
Right beside us, yes, sir.
What are you going to do for him as far as buffers and barriers?
We have agreed with him to work with him on a row of Leland cypresses on his property. Mm-hmm. And we are also going to address his driveway. Will now be coming off of the new road that we put in. We'll be having a meeting with my construction superintendent on the site. We're waiting until this hearing was taken care of one way or the other. But in any case, for the subdivision, we have to address his driveway. Right. And we have told him that wherever his driveway ends up, we'll work it out together and we'll end up paving it for him. So we're going to take care of Mr. Coghill.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. I haven't talked to him, but I noticed he was next to you, and I'm going to take your word for it right now that you've talked to him and.
Oh yeah, yes, sir. We had a community meeting at the funeral home, right? And he was there, and we met with him and talked to him quite some length, and we're going to meet with him again on his site.
Okay, and before you do anything, houses or this particular property, if approved, you're going to do the road first.
Oh yeah, that would be the first step.
That's kind of what it says here. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, thank you. I think that was it for you.
All right.
Did you want to do more discussion, Mr. Chairman, or were you ready?
I think we're ready to proceed.
Okay. Well,
we can have discussion along the way.
All right. If there's any discussion, we'll do that. Mr. Fincham, you want to come on up, or I don't guess you have to, but. To be honest, Mr. Gerald, I pretty much tell people the same thing, whether we're in front of a lot of people or we're behind closed doors, or pretty much. But I was on the short end of your Ladysmith Commons project, and I was on the short end of your Brookwoods project. So I was really looking for any reason at all to turn this down. And unfortunately, I really couldn't find a reason. I got folks here who just came because they're taking the bus to go from Bowling Green to Carmel Church to get a job. You probably got an opportunity for a couple of them to get a job there. So that's a good benefit. For the town, I understand the town's concern. I'm actually working, Mr. Manster and I sit together sometimes on the museum board. The county's put together a plan to put a museum in the town. Mr. Akers will remember many years ago when the new court building was built, there was discussion about not having that building in the town, but we kept that in the town. We're talking about doing a victory park to do some other things in the town. So I think there's no doubt, at least from my perspective, that the county believes a viable town of Bowling Green is good for the county. And the county wants Bowling Green to be successful. And I understand your position. But I think in this case, if I'm given the opportunity to possibly provide some jobs for some folks that would be closer to them, an opportunity for a business to come here, I really have no choice but to motion in favor of this rezoning. So that's my motion.
Second.
Okay, your motion's been made, probably second, that we proceed with RZ 06-2009. Any discussions on the motion? All right. Hearing none, board will proceed to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Aye. Do you have dissension in the board? Mr. Popowich, how do you vote?
Yay.
Mr. Akers, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Seeley, how do you vote?
Nay.
Mr. Vice Chairman, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And the chair votes aye as well, so, motion approved. Okay, next item, I think the treasurer is here.
I'm going to do her before Fred.
She probably wants to go home.
Yeah, we did have her at 7:30. We appreciate the folks from Fred. You guys be next.
I'll make it quick. I understand you all have already had the report from Ms. Hatcher on
Yes, ma'am, we
her
did.
quarterly report. So I'm sure she probably covered much of what I have to say about the property taxes. Look good. Building permits are still down a little bit due to us having the amount of houses on the market. I think that we do. Maybe this will change some of that. The permit fees. Transient occupancy taxes are still, they're down, but meals tax are up. I think that's reflected in the, a lot of the money that Sharon them collected from the state fair. Utilities, the operation numbers look good there. That rate increase, I believe, has got a lot to do with that. Plus, them taking over the billing themselves, I think will help. They've identified some accounts that maybe had been overlooked, problem accounts, and so I think with them having the utility billing there, we'll be able to see how that transpires. We are still, though, at 41% of budget for both the utility billing and looks like the availability fees are right at 40%. Good news is we had money at the end of December after just bringing in all the tax collections. That did allow us to cover the debt service that we had paid from the debt retirement fund in the first 6 months. But if you look at the fund balance on that balance sheet for the general fund, we're still at 5.6, and we will have to pay that $6 million back at the end of June. So we've still got a ways to go, but we're working on it. Are there any questions about any specific?
Board members have questions of the treasurer? Okay. All right, well, we appreciate your report. The only thing I saw, basically, we did, again, notice that a lot of the permits and fees, those sorts of things, are short, probably most areas that's one of significance. But
Well, the real estate taxes are still, holding up, and we are getting some money from, like attorneys from closings, I guess, where they are foreclosing on the properties, unfortunately, but that is keeping the real estate taxes coming in.
okay. All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Kern. Okay, next we have the discussion with Fred officials regarding the implementation of new county bus routes. And if the Fred, as they make their way down, they just let us know who you are and what your plans are for us.
Good evening. My name is Arnold Levine. I handle policy and planning and compliance for Fredericksburg Regional Transit. Mrs. Beck is sorry that she couldn't make it here this evening. She's has urgent family business that she needed to take care of. I'm here with Wendy Kimball, who is our Deputy Director of Public Transit in the city of Fredericksburg. As you know, we instituted revised services this past Monday in and around Caroline County. For the record, I would like to note the process we went through to seek public comment prior to our implementing those changes. We, of course, met with county officials in September to first broach the subject. In fact, that wasn't the first broaching of suggested changes. Those took place more than 2 years ago, but we put those off for a number of reasons. We met with this board in October and presented the outlines of the proposal then, and it was approved at that time to move ahead. We published a call for comment in the Freelance Star and the Caroline Progress in November. We also gave interviews for the Freelance Star and the Progress as well. We published this information on our website, and we posted notice on all of our buses starting in November. So we did our best to give the public a chance to learn about the proposed changes and give us the kind of feedback that we got tonight. And we certainly understand that nothing focuses one's attention more than having a bus go someplace that you didn't expect it to go when you board it in the morning. So we certainly understand that, and we've taken on board all of the comments we heard tonight. There is one short-term fix that we'd like to propose. The one issue that was mentioned was that connectivity between the social services bus stop and downtown Bowling Green was made more difficult by the change. We will propose and hopefully implement shortly a rerouting of the buses so that that connectivity is reestablished and approved. We do this in 2 ways. On the C1, we have, when our buses come into town, they do 2 loops around Bowling Green before they proceed to DSS. We will now bring those buses into DSS before we loop them around town, so there will be a better connection for people there. The second thing that we would propose to do is on the Don and Port Royal runs, where we currently use called the bypass, the 301 bypass, instead of running through town. This is the way the service existed before, and we hadn't changed it. But again, to give people more options for getting into and out of town from DSS and from Port Royal and Don, we can route those buses through downtown Bowling Green. That will obviate the need for anybody to transfer from those lines onto the C1 line to get into downtown Bowling Green. The problem, the issue that was raised about the change in service between Bowling Green and Carmel Church presents us with a tougher challenge. It is one we are prepared to sit with our customers and discuss, and with representatives of the county and town. If you recall, when Mrs. Beck was here in October, she indicated that the underlying rationale for making the changes that we had proposed was to address what had been a continuing plea on the part of county residents for service up and down Route 1 and into the Cosner Corner area. And that's what, among other things, that's what the service does. In making those changes, unfortunately, we broke the early morning link between Bowling Green and Carmel Church. We have a number of options that we're prepared to consider in that respect. One would be to go back to the old schedule. Another would be to take the schedule that we have now and to look at ways that we might start a little earlier in the morning, maybe reverse the flow later in the afternoon, so that that particular trip is one that can still be made. That is an early morning, relatively early morning run from Bowling Green to Carmel Church, allow an individual 8 hours, 8.5 hours in Carmel Church, and then be able to get a bus back late in the afternoon. I understand that that's the objective that our employer colleague from Carmel Church is interested in, and certainly people who have travel in that direction would be interested in doing as well. We're certainly willing to look at ways that we could reconnect early in the morning and make it possible to get back late in the afternoon. All of this, all of the proposed changes and the changes we put into effect last week are being done within the existing budget envelope for fiscal year 10. So any fix, any adjustments that we might want to make, we would again propose to be done within that envelope. There was one other comment from the earlier speaker about moving to 5-day-a-week service from Dawn and Port Royal into Bowling Green. That would represent an expansion of service that is not accounted for in the fiscal 2010 budget, and which we could not undertake unless the board decided to provide additional funding. So again, I would say we're prepared to make, in fairly short order, I will discuss with our operations manager what it will take to reroute the C2 and the C1 buses so that they integrate service to DSS and into the city on every run through town, so that one doesn't have to worry about whether it's coming clockwise or counterclockwise to make that trip, and you don't have to go all the way through Lee's Hill just to get 2 miles up the street to Bowling Green. So we'll do that on those 2 runs, and we're prepared to discuss further how we might adjust service on the C1 to improve the morning service in the direction of Carmel Church and provide a return trip late in the afternoon. So if you have any questions on that, I'd be happy to answer them, or any other questions on service in the area.
Okay, I know specifically Mr. Thomas basically asked you guys to come, so Mr. Thomas start his questions. So.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Levin, I appreciate you coming, and understand that my reason for asking you folks to be here was purely to do my job, and my job is to make sure the citizens of Carolina get the services they require. And we met with you, and you talked about the schedule, and to be honest, I don't think any board member here knows the real impact to the schedule more than the people who ride the schedule. And if you tell me you're going to do something with the schedule tomorrow, I'm going to say, sure, that sounds good. We're going to assume you talked to those folks, and I could see them shaking their head when you were saying what you did. Not saying you didn't do it. They might not have seen what you did. So I would like to ask just one question is we're getting people to Cosner's Corner and the new shopping area in Fredericksburg. Do you know